Okay, 7:15, I hereby open the Sherborn Conservation Commission meeting of April 13th, 2023. We'll do a roll call vote. Michael Lesser present.
Jacob Strauss present.
Orniak present.
Carol McGarry present.
Matt Olair present.
Thank you. Okay. Any critical issues that showed up in the last 24 hours? Okay, then the agenda is fine as is. Let's see. We have a few minutes, I guess, before our 7:20 hearing. Let's see, any 4-minute site issues, Joyce?
No, nothing to report at this moment.
Okay, we'll see what happens during the meeting. What comes in over the wire. Okay, do we have any administrative approvals?
I have not written them up yet. There are about 4 of them, but they're not written yet, so we'll put those on the next one.
Okay. In process, okay. And moving right along, everybody saw the warrant for some miscellaneous expenses. Anybody have any questions about that? Small stuff. Okay. Any particular announcements that anybody wants to make, other than that summer is here? I don't know where spring went. And my daffodils are suffering. Okay. Let's see, we have 3 minutes here. Scheduling issue of, we don't seem to have a lot of projects coming in, unless people felt otherwise, even though there's only 5 of 7 of us here. We were thinking of just going back to the old first and third Thursdays that we were doing for a long time. So therefore, given the workload, and that I think Joyce was okay with that NOI to go on to the later period. Then
You have to get that in writing just in case.
No,
yes,
we did, because they, yes,
Good.
it was not accepted until today. but
Yeah,
still we requested, Deborah requested it, 21 days.
perfect.
okay, therefore our next meeting is going to be on May 4th. Back to, and then we'll just stick on our first and third Thursdays. And until something else arises that causes us to do otherwise. Okay, so therefore we got another 3-week period here before that. Let's see, any other little odds and ends in the remaining minute that we have here. So we still have one discussion item left and our agenda here and the minutes. That we're going to do. Okay, I'm holding my breath for. Okay, and Luck and Karen showed up here just in the nick of time.
And I will leave you now.
Well, you're still allowed to be here. Yeah, unless you just want to. Okay. Whoops. Welcome, Karen.
Good evening. I'm just going to jump off my other meeting. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Oh, it's one of those.
Huh? Just when I got that longest minute over with. It's 7:20 and I'm now reopening the hearing for the continued hearing the notice of intent for 21 Spywood Road for proposal to install an addition, pool, and replacement septic system. Okay. I think I see Chris is here from GLM, and we have our Karen here representing us. So let's go forth. What new stuff do you has happened in the last few weeks?
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Caborio from GLM Engineering. I'm going to be representing 21 Spywood. Sorry, I'm a little behind the ball on this one, so I'm trying to play catch up. But it's my understanding that there were 3 outstanding issues from your last meeting. The first one is that there was no DEP file number, which has since been assigned, and it is on your agenda. It's 283-441.
Got it?
The other item was the existing drain line that's on the right side of the property that we're proposing to extend past the proposed addition. Our Rob Truax from my office met with Sean Colleen from the DEP last week, and Sean was okay with that as long as all the construction is supervised by the DPW, I'm sorry. And that could be a condition of the order if you so wish. And then the other item was about the meadow in the back, the mowed meadow, about planting some trees. We revised the plan, which actually, if you would allow me to share my screen, I can show you the revisions. But we put the trees along the perimeter of that field, and then we have a note on that field to mow it one time each year during the dry conditions. Is it okay if I share my screen?
By all means.
Okay, and everybody see the plan?
Not yet.
Fine. There it is.
Oh, there it goes. Okay,
It emerged.
takes a little while.
Yes.
So this is the drain line on the right-hand side of the property. And then the open meadow, which I think was a topic of discussion at the last meeting. And we are proposing to put trees kind of around the perimeter of that open meadow, and then have it conditioned to be mowed once a year during the dry conditions. Are there any other questions, or do you want me to go over the project as a whole again?
I guess commissioners can ask, I don't know, Karen, did you want to make any comments before?
No, I've spoken with Rob a couple of times. So he did meet with Sean. DPW does want maybe a condition that all drainage work related to that go through DPW. And Rob stated that he wanted to keep that wet meadow as a wet meadow. And a wet meadow is a healthy resource area, so that's not totally shouldn't totally off the table. And I don't know, Chris, I spoke with Rob today, and I thought he was going to just put the trees, scatter those on all of the lot, on the lot.
That was a consideration, but
Okay.
that area to the left of the house is really the only lawn that these folks have. So that's why we decided to put them along the edge of the meadow instead, so that they're not impacting the usable area of the lawn space.
Okay.
Was there an issue of some at the exit from the drain with the riprap with the whether there was some sort of plantings to go there to make it a little bit more robust there? I think that was a topic that came up last time in my notes.
At the proposed riprap area?
Yeah, or just beyond where it enters the where, I mean, it's in the buffer zone.
Mhm.
And whether there was some plantings or bareness or something like that in there that seemed to, I can't remember. I thought there was some discussion of the fact that it wasn't very well planted there. That maybe it could use some strengthening there. I don't know, whatever the term, but I don't know. Courtney, do you remember that? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think what we had talked about last time was that area to the right, beyond the riprap was gonna be allowed to go like revert from lawn to, natural conditions. Whereas the area on the left would be maintained as lawn. And I don't remember, my eyes are not working to see whether where the markers are on here.
Monuments, right, yeah. What about that issue, Karen and Chris, about the idea? I just want to walk through it. I mean, I guess I'll just walk through it. I'm just starting with the
So you're
drain.
thinking a healthier ground cover?
Or just to leave it that way, the issue of whether at
Leave it
the,
natural.
whether that could go back natural there in that area going, that the edge of lawn would be, not include that, I think was part of the deal with that area there, whether that was, since that's basically close to the 50-foot area as well. I don't know whether that was discussed further with Rob and the owners.
So that's fine. I think that's reasonable.
I think it can go back to natural.
Okay, so that way we would we would have to have a plan here that would show edge of lawn, so to speak. Where do you think you could put what would be reasonable here to put sort of a line that goes from the lawn up towards sort of that head wall area in terms of what would be the edge of lawn?
Maybe they're at the 50-foot buffer on that right-hand side.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of what Chris what you think is, when you think it's reasonable, since we have to get agreement with the owner too, whether if you're here on behalf, what do you think is going to be reasonable to do that? I mean, I don't know where to start since the whole head wall riprap area is in the buffer zone, whether from the flare of that on the left's the flare of that riprap area, whether there's some line, whether that goes along the 50-foot to the tree line there, and then.
Yeah, I think it could be, like you said, Michael, that from the flare to the 50 in this area here.
Or even going off.
I'd just be a little concerned about impeding the flow of water through there with anything. That's all.
So you
But-
could do a little ground cover there. It's going to be disturbed because we're going to be working in that area, so you're going to have to plant something.
Maybe
So-
you could do a native meadow mix.
Okay. Is that, and right, the question is whether it's just that flaring out, or does it flare over? I don't know what it's like underneath those trees. I just see the crowns of
There's-
those, say
There's
4 or
not
5.
much going on over there,
Any reason.
if I remember from the last time I was on the site, so that was a long time ago,
Yeah,
right? There's not much going on in the understory of those.
Yeah, I don't
There-
believe so. The last time I was on site was when we did the soil testing, so it's been a while for me as well.
Yeah,
Is it just lawn, like kind of above those trees? Right now, that's just lawn.
So it's not a strong lawn. It's
Yeah.
the natural, under tree. It's not a plush lawn. It's just
Okay.
lawn.
So that can just be left natural and have the same mowing regimen as the wet meadow.
In that 50-foot area after the riprap. Yeah, well,
yeah, you just- yeah.
something's gonna have to be planted because it's gonna be disturbed to create that area, so.
Well, we're talking about further to the top of the picture, let's say, like inside the 50-foot.
Within the 50-foot. Yeah,
What,
you could,
what is that area like up
Yeah,
there?
that area.
What is that?
I believe is grass lawn. Good
Is
lawn.
That's lawn that they'd want to keep as good lawn?
They wanted to keep, Chris, I don't recall in that area, I think on that side, they were proposing to there was, along the right-hand side, they were proposing to let some area go natural. Is that from the 50 to the wetland line?
I'm not really sure. That was not part of the discussion that I had with Rob. But I mean, based on the color of, you know, what the lawn is, this lighter green color in this area here, this would be lawn. But, I mean, you are right, it is, you know, in the 50-foot buffer.
Yeah, so I guess it's I mean, right, the question is, right, whether that area there could be also as part of where the monuments would go, whether that could also just be left to go back to a sort of a less managed sort of inner buffer zone.
Right. That actually, that's what we had, I'm pretty sure that's what we had discussed, because now looking closely at the plan, that's where the wetland bounds are, right, along that 50?
The wetland bounds, yeah, they're on the.
Yeah.
50, one
And then,
here,
and then
one
they were gonna like go
Mhm.
around the curve of that tree line and then go along the edge of the wetlands, the wet meadow. So I guess the
Okay.
understanding with the last meeting was that we had carved that off as that would be kind of naturalized
Right.
beyond the bounds, and then they would be allowed to keep all that lawn on the left side that goes right up to the wet meadow.
Yep, yeah, there is another wetland bound here where my cursor is.
Yeah.
Here, and then here, right along the
Yeah.
edge of the meadow.
Yeah,
Where's the, then what are we thinking is gonna be, whether we need another monument? Oh, there's a wetland bound.
So this wetland monuments.
Right on the 50 foot
Yeah,
by the
right,
tree.
yeah, right on the
Yeah.
50-foot to the tip of that kind of sticky out part of the
Yeah,
trees.
no, I see it
Yeah,
there.
the
Yeah.
tree line here, yep.
Yeah, I
there
see
is
the
a little
wetland bound
right here.
there.
Yeah, then it kind of zips around to
And it
the,
would just sort of go along with that. Okay,
Yes.
so we already have
Yeah.
that carved out. It's
Yeah.
only, so then really we're only talking about, and then there was only that area from the riprap down to the 50. That we were just, that little flare there that we were just talking about that, I guess. I guess if we're putting the bounds there, whether the bounds should be moved out towards the edge of the to the almost like the erosion control barrier line. Those two bounds there, or are there going to be much management between the riprap and the 50-foot?
I can't say, but I wouldn't think there'd be much management over on that end, especially if that drain is flowing.
Right,
The drain line ever flows, it you know, obviously flows to the wetlands. So I don't know what kind of management there would be there, or even, you know, a really good lawn of any type because of that flow.
right, yeah, who knows with the weather these days?
and I think that's why we were just discussing letting it go kind of natural, and like Karen said, any disturbed areas, you could throw some seed mix in there. But not really, I don't think we had discussed going crazy with any kind of plantings or anything. It was just to stop mowing that area as a lawn.
What do we think about that, the area inside the 50-foot, like just above where the cursor is, where those two monuments are, and then going towards the wetland? Did we have a management idea for that? Or that was just gonna left to go back natural? What was the,
I believe that was gonna be left to go natural.
okay. So we would condition it that whole area would go natural, the area. The question is the condition of between that 50-foot line and the riprap. What do we want to say? How do we want to condition that? That's just has to be made sure that there's some sort of continuous herbaceous layer.
I mean, they could use a,
Sure.
like I suggested before, they could use a native wet meadow mix. It would probably establish really well there if there's any outfall.
Yeah, I just can't tell how intermittent the
Yeah.
flow is. It's like these days, our rainfall pattern is so spiky. And how well it would do. What
So
do you
they
think?
could use a erosion control conservation mix. That would, I believe that stays pretty low. And it would be a stronger, stronger seed mix to use.
Okay, well, what do you think of that? What does other people think about that?
Makes sense.
Okay, why don't we just, so in between the 50-foot and the riprap, we'll just have the erosion control mix. And they should just maintain some sort of continuous herbaceous layer. And watch out and condition that there shouldn't be any signs of erosion into the 50-foot. Would be another condition. No set, I guess it's really, yeah, I guess it's no erosion or sediment. Okay. and
Can I
then-
ask Chris one question?
Yeah,
So Chris, I was out to the south site several times and there was no flow from that pipe, even with rain. Was there some kind of blockage in the pipe? Are we gonna look for that or?
That I don't know. I know Rob was looking into that, but it didn't look like, again, the last time I was on site was when we did the soil testing. And that pipe did not appear to have any flow whatsoever. So I don't know if it's an issue of the catch basins up in the street not properly working, or maybe there is a blockage. I don't know if the plan is to actually replace that entire line or just continue it on. But I'm sure Sean and the DPW will probably do a little bit of investigation on that.
I
yeah,
think when Rob was here in the last meeting, he said something about everything was messed up with the pipe, and I know Sean was also, they had some work to do with it, so
Yeah, again, I'm not sure if the plan is to replace everything.
yeah,
or
we're just part of it.
to extend it. I mean, it is an old concrete pipe. And actually, when we were doing the soil testing, a little piece of it was actually visible above ground.
yeah, I
So
think we're gonna just condition it to make it
Uh,
simpler.
Yeah,
That whatever, that the, that any work there basically is done, that that there's an agreement, prior agreement with Sean and DPW.
Yep.
On what work would be done with that pipe, and then oversight, so it'll be 2 steps. That there would be some sort of initial plan work that would be agreed to, and then he would have some oversight. That way, it can be sorted out in the best interests of the homeowner and DPW. And they can work out how to parcel that up.
can I ask one more question about that drainage easement area? So past the riprap, the easement continues into the 50-foot. Is there any kind of, do you know if there's any kind of maintenance that needs to happen there? Or do they need to prevent woody species from growing up, or does it not matter?
I mean, I think typically with an easement, the town would have the right to come in and clear enough so that, it doesn't impede the flow.
Okay,
And that's why, like, earlier I was mentioning, a little leery about putting plantings there. To
right,
get
right.
too large and impede the flow and have the town come in or somebody come in and cut them all down.
Oh, here, Sean must know that we're talking about him. Here, he's coming on now, so. I just wasn't sure if we needed to make any accommodations for mowing in that area, but
I think the town automatically has it.
yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
Sean, can you hear us? You there, Sean?
Me?
Yeah.
You're
That was quick. I
Sure.
just got here. Sorry, I was trying to go to a fire, but then I didn't go.
We'll just fill you in on this thing. In the end, we're gonna condition the project so that the actual, any construction work done on that drainage pipe, either checking it out, repairing it, adding to it, that before any work begins on that, that the condition would be that there's agreement with you as to the plan of what to do. And then the next step would be that any of the work you can oversee any of the work on that. So it's sort of 2 parts. Does that seem to cover everything you need?
It does. And then the as-built for the project will serve as my as-built for that pipe, as me and Rob had discussed,
Okay.
right?
Yep. So, okay, so then we're basically, so I guess we're basically done with that part of the project, with that kind of conditioning. And I think we've cleared up what's going to be managed and unmanaged in that area. Going to the landscaping part on the other side there, we're getting a nice mitigation of letting that wet meadow be mowed once around there, and it's demarcated by the trees, which I think is quite reasonable. The trees that I guess we have, I guess the circles, I can't tell how many trees there are there. that are new. All those circled things there. 2, 3, 4, 6. I guess it's,
Those are all new.
15 trees.
yeah. Okay, because we normally put the number. Yeah, 15 trees. Do
15
we
trees.
care about the trees that are further in from, whoops?
There's
Oh,
there's the planting schedule with the trees.
okay, what do people think about that choice? Anybody have any comment about that?
It's fine.
Fine, choice is good.
Okay, good. Scroll back there.
Yep.
And I'm just, the 3 trees sort of at the top along the, I guess this is what the applicant would prefer, basically. I'm just trying to think of the 3 trees that are also on the right end, whether they're right next to existing trees, I guess, whether they add very much.
Oh, in through here.
Yeah, whether they could just be, whether they would be better served somewhere else. I can't picture the place very well to know whether those trees add something to the, because I see the existing tree canopy marked. What people think about that.
I believe that existing canopy is shrubby
Okay,
than tree.
okay,
I would just leave the trees as is.
okay, fine. The mowing thing is. Do we care about one time in the dry season? Do we care about the time of year? Whether we worry about what birds and other wildlife go there and whether, and,
Well, I'm on our own conservation lands, we usually mow in October and November. Or, so that you're basically brushing everything back without hurting the pollinators or anything like that. So November might be a good one. I think the
I
ground
think
might
it's
be
a little
fairly
late in the
dry.
season. Whether we want to do it September 15th or an October 1st, so that.
No, the point is to do it late in the season.
Yeah, you want to do it
You're
late.
just trying to knock down the woody material. But like this is becoming harder and harder because the ground doesn't freeze very reliably. So
So do we want to ask if we can do a November 1st or an October 15th? What date? To give them flexibility as well as to protect the
I mean, do we need to specify a date? Can we say when
We
the
just
ground
want
is
to say late fall or winter.
when the ground is frozen so they don't damage the meadow?
Well, do we want to say it's frozen versus dry?
I think it would be good to say dry, because I feel like if it's late October, early November, hopefully it'll be dry enough. I think it's good to say dry.
I would like to give a date, just to give a little more clarity.
Maybe November 1st. Before November 1st, between October 15th and November 1st.
Well, no, we were saying that they can do it after that. I'm just setting the earliest date as
A
well.
2-week period doesn't seem long enough because
Well,
if it,
No, I wouldn't limit when they could do it as opposed to the end point. I would just limit when they could start for the habitat reason. That's all I'm getting at is whether to say anytime after October, the one mow a year can be done anytime after October 15th or November 1st when under dry conditions. Is what I'm,
that works.
and that way they can pick whatever time they do it. And if there's not a lot of woody stuff there, or it doesn't go up, they don't even have to, I mean, they might not need to do it every year. They can decide about that. So it could be mowed at most, it would be at most once a year, and they can decide. So does October 15th give enough time for the birds and whatever and more flexibility for them, or do we want to go later?
I mean, I think I'm looking for the frost dates, and usually it's around October 15th, October 30th, when you get a really hard frost. And that's when, that's when the pollinators start to hibernate or whatever, because there's just not going to be anything for them. There
Well,
won't be. any
let's
nectar
just pick
for
a
them.
date.
I mean, I'd say either October 15th or October 30th.
Well, we got to pick.
I
That's what I've been saying for the last.
guess I'd choose October 30th. Like, yeah, probably November 1st.
Halloween, the 31st.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, that's what we try to do at the barber. for
Okay.
exactly that reason.
See if they, okay there. So that seems, given that they'll be doing it annually, I don't think there's gonna be a lot of buildup. And they could do it at most once a year and they don't have to do it. Okay, I guess, I'll bring up an idea I had that, I mean, I think basically that sort of covers everything except for a new idea that I had that I'll just bring up to see whether along the intermittent brook, whether we wanted a 10-foot or some sort of buffer that was not managed at all, as sort of protection for the water quality of the brook. It's a new idea. Obviously, the applicants aren't here for that. So I
That
think-
seems like a good idea, but I haven't been on the site, so Karen, is the brook kind of, does it have a bank? Is it, I mean, as it is, that might make it easier to mow in some ways if we create a buffer around it.
It has a bank, but there's no, there's not really a buffer right now, so. But there is a bank.
From a wetland perspective, what do you think, Karen, that would have some extra value for?
I think a buffer would be good. 10 foot is more than fair.
Oh, yeah, it's got rocks there. When I'm looking at the stream, I can't tell which way the rocks, which side the rocks are on, but I guess there already is.
Can you
Um,
shade screen and I'll,
I'm looking at the app. Okay, Chris, why don't you stop
Yep,
sharing?
let me stop mine.
And let me just bring up what I'm looking in the application summary.
oh, I have that here.
And I'm gonna share that for everybody.
I mean, it'd be interesting to know where they're mowing it now.
Well, they're mowing it. Oh, yeah, right. I mean, here's the real this picture here. That, how can I make this bigger? In this word thing, view, zoom. Now, if this side is the side, if the right side is where the property is, then there already is a sort of a buffer here.
Yeah, I believe that is, Michael, the lawn is on the right side there, that photo.
Okay,
The lawn is on the right side, yeah, but there's no
Yeah.
vegetation. There's no vegetational buffer.
yeah, I know, I don't see anything along the stream.
Well, it's
except-
also, yeah.
This is a time of year when you might not see it. But I guess it shouldn't be a problem to sort of have a
Tell them not to manage along the boulders along the bank.
boulders there except for invasives removal. They want to do that.
But are there boulders all the way along it? Or is that just,
I don't know, it looks a little, why don't we just say that there's a 10-foot? Unless Chris would feel like it would be a problematic thing to close our hearing and move forward with the idea of basically keeping a few feet off of the boulders. Or a 10-foot border that's left to go natural except for invasives management.
10 feet off the edge of water or the top of bank?
I guess edge of wood is always hard to do given the conditions these days. I guess I'd probably say, so top of bank, I guess we would define as just where the peak is here, I guess, going around. I
that's
guess,
probably easier when we know it's intermittent, right? It's,
yeah, I think we need to use the top of bank thing. I don't know what the bank looks like down in the distance. Or whether that's their property or not. It's a nice stream. So what do you think of, since you're the one here for the applicant, Chris,
Yeah,
unfortunately?
I don't think 10 feet from top of bank is really gonna impact that area, because again, it's not really gonna be used except for maintaining the vegetation. It's not gonna be used as a play area, which I think it previously has been.
Okay, so why don't we do 10 feet
Sounds
for-
good.
from top of bank?
Yeah.
And they can do invasives, and I think that might be it.
I have a question. Is the other side just wooded, Chris, so that it's been left untouched anyway? It's all natural?
I believe so. I think it's kind
Yes.
of difficult to get over on that side to do
Okay.
any type of work so.
It's all wooded on the other side.
It's all what it,
Okay. So I think, does anybody have, let's see, what are our other kind of typical conditions that, let's see, on the, one of the sometimes contentious things is the, in the meadow, in the wetland area, there'd be no use of any pesticides or herb chemicals or fertilizers. On the lawn side, normally we would have that there would be no, the question is it's, I mean, we're getting a tremendous mitigation from here, but that normally we would have no pesticide use in the 50-foot buffer zone. I can't remember if that what came up last time at all. Just trying to wrap up our last few conditionings. We would have fertilizer and pesticide. Normally, we would have no pesticide in the no alteration zone and no fertilizer except for slow release nitrogen. I guess that's, I can't remember if that came up before. And whether I'm springing it on Chris to, on behalf of the applicant. What
Yeah,
about,
I'm really sure. I mean, isn't that a kind of a standard condition
Yeah.
for what you require anyway?
yeah, no, that's what we do. I just always like to bring it up anyway, out of fairness to everybody. So we will have those kind of conditioning.
Michael, if I can just ask, so in the wet meadow, you want no pesticides or herbicide? The fertilizer, where are you allowing that?
We've allowed it since it's lawn. I guess we've allowed sort of only slow release nitrogen. Sometimes we've said organic. And that would be in there, and we would generally have no pesticide use in the no alteration zone.
Got it.
Can anybody think of other conditions that we want to bring up and discuss before we close the hearing?
Oh,
Okay, hearing none. Let's see, do we need, so the plan changes, we would need,
excuse me, Michael, I do have a question. The pool, do you have any specific conditions you use regarding pools?
I guess there have been issues of where you pump, whether you can't pump the water out. Yes.
Yeah, we've had issues about
Yeah.
that, saying that it can't be pumped toward the wetlands. It has to be taken, if it has chlorine or salt, it has to be
I'd be
removed.
taken off site.
Is there a infiltration system that could handle that seasonal drawdown?
I
You have to
mean,
draw it down to the skimmers.
whoops, what do you mean? In terms of an
Yes.
alternative to pumping it and taking it away?
So the pool will have to be pumped. Will have to be pumped out down to the skimmers.
I think people usually get somebody to come pump it and take it off the property altogether. But I can't remember.
My dad dumps it in the yard, so.
Sure.
Unless we generally have them put that into an infiltration system.
Yeah,
Right, I guess the question is, we can't go beyond our jurisdiction. Trying to figure out how we worded that, basically you can't do any pumping into the buffer zone.
Right.
And you don't want any running over into the buffer zone,
we
So-
could just leave it at that.
yeah. After that, it's outside of our jurisdiction, so,
Well, when you say the buffer, you mean the 50 to 100, because that's,
I mean, the 100-foot buffer, right, they would have to pump it outside
You
the
would-
100,
okay, right, so they could do it outside on other parts of their property,
right.
right?
Any other ideas before we close the hearing? Okay. I move that we close the hearing on 21 Spinewood.
Second,
Any other discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, I, Carol,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Jacob.
Aye.
Okay, so the hearing is closed. I move that we permit this project as discussed, with the conditions as discussed and on the plan, trying to figure out whether we need any. I guess we need some additions. If we're going to use the plan, whether we do we need any further, do we need any plan changes to include with this? The sort of the issue of I guess we have the monuments, I guess the planting area around the drainage ditch. I guess we can put in the conditions.
Well, and just specify that somehow specify that area beyond the wetland bounds on the right side, that's the same color as lawn, is not actually going to be maintained as lawn.
Right.
That's,
Yeah, but that, none of that is specified on the plan at this point, that whole area there.
that's
Yeah.
why I'm saying it needs to be specified somehow.
And it's a condition, yeah.
Right. Question is that,
So the area within the 50-foot markers would be kept natural, right?
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
anything
Okay.
beyond the wetland bounds.
Okay, up to, so we need a plan from GLM that sort of makes some note there that area
Okay.
is not part of Edgelon.
So you do want a revision showing that change?
Yeah, right.
Okay,
It'll make it easier for everybody.
Yep.
Uh,
and then what about the 10-foot buffer? Do you want to have that shown on?
yeah, I want to, yes, that's a good point. Put the 10 foot from
Okay,
bank a line, draw a line there too, with Mark, we write that up. Okay, thank you for noting that. Okay. I find that the project, as discussed and with the mitigation of the handling of that wet meadow more than compensates for the increased impervious surface in the outer buffer zone. And that there will be no adverse impacts on the wetlands. In fact, there should be a significant improvement for the wetlands with the conditions discussed. I guess I'll end it there.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, Michael, I, Courtney,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Jacob.
Aye.
Okay, good. A project. And everybody comes out ahead, I think. So, no, I like the fact that we get all that protection now of that wet meadow. So, thank you for your time filling in, Chris.
thank you for your time and consideration on this project.
Okay. Okay,
right.
Karen, I guess we'll be in touch for the draft of all this stuff there and we'll work this out.
Great.
Thank you for working on this and we'll look forward to the draft.
Great, thank you.
Okie dokie.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yep. Let's see here. 8:15, we have 15 minutes before 0 Maple Street. I see we have Francis here, okay, and Lee. And so it'll be another 15 minutes before we can open that continued hearing. In the meanwhile, I will move along here to share the screen.
Sean has his hand raised.
Sean, go forth.
I ran away, but it sounded like you might have been looking for a filler. But then I heard you were sharing screen and I couldn't lower my hand. You
Okay,
guys looking for an update to kill some time?
an update on what?
Depends on what.
Dodge Pond.
Oh, boy.
Sure.
Oh, you're gonna love this, Courtney.
I guess this is under handling it under site visits, site questions. Okay,
Get attacked by a beaver?
Well, there's plenty of beaver in that pond, and I just wanted to update the commission that I didn't trap any of them. And I'm not gonna, but we did, with Beaver Solutions, we installed yesterday a beaver fence around the culvert. The culvert that's closest to Fred Dodd's driveway has been blocked all year. We unclogged it a couple times. The beaver were actually going in it and stuffing it full. And anyone that's driven by that has noticed the roadway was within, the water was within 6 to 8 inches of the road, so it was getting pretty dangerous. So that's our update. There was a whole nother police matter that was associated with the work that was out there, if anyone saw online, but that had nothing to do with us.
Okay.
But we did do that. I talked to Fred. I've been trying to call Fred for 3 months, and he's down in Florida. He finally called when he heard there was work going on, but he was just interested to know what was going on. That's all we did. And that's all we're gonna do for now.
So is that handling it? When did you finish doing that?
I don't know. We finished installing it yesterday. There's a lot of beaver activity inside Fred's pond. The water's pretty high. It's high against the road, which was more concerning to me. I mean, if the pond raises a foot or two, it always did behind that earthen berm. The concern for me was it was rising at the edge of the road.
So you'll have to see now whether it recedes, basically.
That's right.
That'll be
You know,
your
the
next
beaver are going to
report.
keep it at a certain level, and then it'll overtop the beaver dams when it needs to. The problem was when it overtopped before, it only had the one culvert that's at the eastern edge of Dodd's property. Now both culverts hopefully should be open. So
Okay, so you think it'll keep the thing right, and the beavers won't start building the dam? I guess you don't care about the height there, you just want to make sure that the culverts are clear.
Right. I mean, they built dams, and they're probably going to reinforce them. So we'll see what happens. But most of that is on Fred's property, so he's going to have to deal with that more than us.
So the question is whether if his property backs it up against the road, the question is whether Central Mosquito would put in a deceiver or a leveler.
Right. Well, we put the deceiver in. We'll see. I mean, if he's got other channels built.
Oh, okay, so there is a water leveler there, not just.
Well, we put the fence in as the deceiver, and typically they'll stay away from that. But because there's like a 20-foot channel there already,
Yeah,
it made it very easy for them to just dam across the 20-foot channel.
okay, well, we'll see then how it works, whether that's.
Yeah, we'll see how it drains in the next couple days and see how well it does.
Well, we can't wait till our next meeting's progress report.
Awesome.
And,
All right, and the key is I didn't trap during season, which I could have done, but I chose not to.
okay,
It would be bad publicity for DPW.
I know, but I said I was gonna in your last meeting, so I just wanted to update that.
okay. I won't look.
Take care.
You're gonna be nominated for the Beaver Saver of the Year.
The most humane DPW director in
There you
Sherborn
go.
for this year,
Oh.
please.
For this year, all right, we'll limit it, or for
Thanks.
this spring and summer. Great, thank you very much, Sean. And good luck with it. Okay. Catching up on minutes, we have 2 sets of minutes here. This is December 1st. Which almost 4 out of 5 of us were here. But why don't you guys start reading through this? And tell me, pipe in when I can scroll down. It's only 3 pages.
Ready?
Yep.
Waiting on Carol and Matt.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'll chime in if I see something wrong. Otherwise, I'm
Well,
sorry.
so I can scroll or not. I need to
Scroll
know.
away.
Carol?
Yep.
Actually, let's see if I. Oops, sorry.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. Michael, I'm okay with this. I don't see any edits.
Okay.
Ready?
Others? You ready?
Yep.
Okay, and Matt,
Yep.
no, this is the last screen.
Looks good to me.
Okay,
I'm also fine with it.
Yep, yep.
Yep, I'm good.
okay, I move that we accept the December 1st minutes as edited.
Second,
Finally. Any discussion? Roll call vote, Michael, I, Matt,
All right.
Jacob,
Abstain since I wasn't there.
okay, Carol,
Hi.
Courtney.
I,
Okay, we got a 4-0-1 vote on that one. And let me share the screen. We might get through the next one here. Hold on. Save. Stop share. Share again. Okay. Move this over here. Oops, I guess I'll just do it this way. And okay, read ahead.
Can I ask for where the agent report on site issues, the second paragraph that starts with JH confirmed?
That's
That-
that whole thing here. It's all this. It was a
Yeah.
separate for 25 Bear Hill Road. That was a tricky one.
Yeah, the second paragraph, it says removing silt. Did we actually talk about removing silt or putting silt barriers? I don't remember.
Oh, yeah, that turned out to seem a little strange.
Kind of unusual.
Oh, yeah, there was
There was
already some silt on site from some.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
They were
had to
rigging it
remove.
up a little bit.
Okay, thank you, Joyce and Michael.
Ready?
I have a couple of small typos. So on the same paragraph, the last line, agenda should be lowercase. And in the next section where it says ML opening the hearing, it should say ML opened the hearing.
Okay, read this part.
And then where it says, don't go too far, there's two lines near the top, a motion, two paragraphs, a motion was made and then a motion was made. So in the second one, in that line, it says in the plan, in the plan. So there's a typo there. Keep going to the right, Michael.
I know.
What's the with the plantings? There were no plantings
There
on
was
that one.
something going on there. I I can't find in my notes why it was, but we somehow had plantings discussed for some reason.
Yeah,
Was
but
this the wetland replication on
No,
Prospect Street?
that was this was just for the delineation of the wetlands. This was on an
I,
annex.
I know, I'm trying to figure out why we were discussing plantings
We-
in an ANRAD.
Yeah, we did not.
So why? Because I have some reason in my notes.
No,
Okay,
and it should be either as depicted on the plan or as shown on the plan.
So I have a question. If you go down to the next sets for 3 Prospect Street, there's 2 sets of motions. I thought this was kind of weird where it says a motion was made and seconded to approve the demolition of the existing house. I mean, we don't approve demolitions. And construction and changing the driveway. I mean, that may have been mentioned that this was done in conjunction with that, but that seems like a strange motion for us to make.
well, we usually say what the project entails, and this is what the project
Right.
entails.
Yes, but we don't approve the demolition of the house. I mean, isn't this the one where we approved basically?
Well, the project included demolishing the existing house and constructing a new house.
Yeah, that's better. But I thought we were approving weren't we approving the wetland replication on this property? Am
Yeah,
I
I'll
getting
stick that
mixed
in
up?
here. Yeah, I'll stick it in here, but this is what the whole project was. Normally we have.
So it included a wetland replication. We definitely should say that.
The second line, be demolished, should be removed.
And the and after new house, maybe a comma instead. The construction of the new house, comma, changing a portion of the driveway.
What's that thing in land management? I thought that thing was called a snow dog. That machine. Was it called a snow land dog?
That sounds more sense. I was just going.
Do you remember, Courtney? Anybody else?
Yeah, there
Oh, the
was,
snow dog makes more sense.
Well, it already says snow. Yeah. You can maybe want to fix it later.
So our experiment there never came to fruition, huh? We never had even close to enough snow to even give it a whirl.
Mhm.
Well, somebody didn't show up with the snow.
Deferred to next year.
Yeah, right. We'll add future commentary.
You can see that the, I don't know, office is trying to flag that there's.
Well,
an extra-
guys, we got to finish this because
Not
we're going to start
noisy.
the hearing. I'd like to finish, let's see, how much do we have left? You guys finished with this page?
Yep.
yeah,
Then this is the last part. Sorry, Francis and Lee. Just want to finish this. Be a minute or two late.
Okay.
Whoever's going to make the final pass and accept the changes, see where there's this like squiggled dark blue line. That's what office is trying to tell us, that there are things wrong. And I don't want to stop, hold us up, but it's correct. You should go back and look at those and fix those.
Okay,
I move that we accept the minutes as edited for December 15th, 2022.
second,
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, I, Jacob,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Courtney,
aye,
Matt.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, good. Thank you for voting twice and frequently, often. Okay, so. Great. Inch by inch, we'll catch up. Okay, I am now reopening the continued hearing for a request to amend the existing order of conditions for DEP 283-425 for 0 Maple Street, Mat 7, Lot 163A, with a proposed revision of for the proposal to revise the proposed house and grading. Okay. Francis and excuse me. I don't think we have any new. Did we get new plans ahead of time or?
We
I guess
did,
some-
yeah.
what?
they did submit new plans. Francis, maybe you could put it up and go over the differences?
So, good evening, everyone. I'm Francis with Creative Land and Water Engineering. I'm going to be filling in for Shang as he's out of the country at the moment.
Excuse me.
Can everyone see?
Yes.
Okay. So here we have our final rendering of the amendment. So last time we were up, we had that the garage was going to be in this area here in the back. So we have since moved it. The garage is going to be in the front of the house. It's going to be a side load garage. So since we were able to move the garage to the front, we were also able to reduce the length of the driveway. So the driveway used to come over here. This is where we would enter for the driveway. And now we're entering over here. So we were able to reduce our impervious area by a significant amount, pulling it back to the front. We were also.
Are you, excuse me, not to interrupt you. I just want to be real clear about something. When you're talking comparisons,
Mhm.
to me, the most important thing for getting through this, any amending, is just to do any changes from this plan to the plan that was approved under the order of conditions.
Okay.
That way, we won't, what you did last time, I mean, you made a lot of improvements compared to that first proposal change.
Yeah.
But I think for the sake of just saving time, if you just talk to exactly what is different between this one and the previously approved plan, would simplify the discussion for everyone.
Okay, so we see here that these red lines, the red lines are all from the original approved plan. the one that was approved last year. We see here, here's the envelope of the approved house with the walkway coming more to the right side of the house if you're facing it. So with this new design, with the final design of what the actual house is going to be, we moved the house back further away from the front of the street. And then we increased our impervious area by 28 square feet into the buffer. So on this next page here, we can see the overlap. So the orange is the approved building envelope, and then the purple is how we're proposing it right now. So the approved plan, we had that the disturbance in the buffer with impervious was going to be 660 square feet. That includes the house and the walkway and landing going up to the house. And now with our current design, we have that our walkway is going to come towards the middle of the house. There's going to be no walkway here in the buffer, and it's going to be only house and then a walkout for the walkout basement. And we're going to put flagstones, field stones down, and create a path up to the backyard and up to the front yard. And then we're proposing that this whole area that we're going to plant low maintenance, low growth vegetation such as ground cedar or ground pine, and put in a condition that that area is not going to be mowed. And basically from the approved, that's it. In the buffer, we increased 28 square feet of impervious in the buffer, and then added these flagstones to be able to walk up to the backyard and walk up to the front yard. And then there's minor tweaks in the grading. We were able to move the driveway to this side. Our septic tank, we moved it slightly. We shifted it slightly over. The red is the approved. It got shifted a couple of feet back into the right. This is how we had our original driveway coming in, this thick red line. And now this is a proposed driveway with a turnaround. So we flattened this area out from the original, since we're going to have to access the garage from the side. So we had to bring this grade out and rip wrap this slope. Yeah, we're not doing any more cutting. Our monuments and our conservation markers are going to stay the same. We didn't change anything about our limit of lawn or disturbance. Our well continued in the same location. Our leaching field continued in the same location. The only thing that moves was the septic tank. And we, in the impervious areas that we increased from the approved design, we did add extra recharge areas. So this wasn't the original design, but we increased this area here. We added an area here, and then we added another area here on the back right if you're facing the left, back left, sorry. I think that's pretty much it, unless Lee has anything to say or add anything.
No, I think you covered it better than I ever could. So thank you.
Right, Mike, I think that's it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. You're on mute.
So you said around the flagstone pathways is going to be like a low growing ground cover kind of stuff?
Exactly. So around 720 square feet, we're going to plant the ground pine or ground cedar and not have it be a mowed area. So no lawn.
So should that not say limit of lawn then?
Yeah.
No, the limit of lawn is yeah, that should change. Yep. So it's not going to be limit of lawn. Limit of lawn is going to be here and then over here above the recharge, the stormwater recharge gallery. So it's going to be parallel to this wing of the retaining wall, and then parallel continuing straight from this wing here of the retaining wall. So lawn from here back, and this whole area, it's just that the low ground cover without being low. So this will have to, I'll have to change.
Is
And
the
we'll just-
ground cedar a native plant?
Yes,
It's ground pine. I'm not very bright tonight.
The slopes that are up above the retaining wall, the 194 to the 200 in the front, how are you gonna stabilize those?
here in the front,
Right in the tan area, within the 100-foot buffer zone. The contours, 194, 196, 198, 200. How will that area be stabilized?
yeah, these are 3 to 1. So we're planning on just doing lawn, regular lawn.
Is that limit of lawn wording there above the proposed well in the wrong place?
Yes. This is wrong. This is from, got carried over from the
Yeah,
previous.
okay, sure, just in terms of the cleanup for the.
Yep.
So we have a final plan.
Yep.
So when you did the original approval, was that area to be lawn?
No, it was not.
So, but now it's gonna be lawn?
No, I can pull up the original approved plan. That's probably something that got carried over. Here's the original approved plan. So yeah, it was gonna be lawn.
I did put the original plan in the meeting folder.
Yeah, this is the one that was approved from April 13th. The last change we had on this one at the time was the relocation of 2 conservation markers. So at the time we did have that, this was all going to be lawn.
The version I see in the meeting folder has another limit of lawn that's at the 100-foot line.
Wait a minute,
Yeah, that's this thing.
Yes, it's that. Yeah, it's that one.
Yeah, this is probably just a typo from another place that I misplaced here. The limit of lawn should be here, limit of lawn with the erosion control barrier, and then a secondary erosion control barrier behind that. There's going to be erosion control in between the markers. And then there's going to be an additional or supplementary erosion control that we're going to put up as we're doing the planting for the mitigation. And then here we have the mitigation in green. And then all this yellow, orange yellow, was going to be our lawn area.
so again, I apologize, so the plan that you all approved with the order of conditions shows the limit of lawn at the 100-foot.
I believe that's probably a typo because this was always going to be lawn for the maintenance of the structures and stuff. That's why we put our plantings over here, all outside of it. Can you share your screen, Joyce, so I can see what plan?
This was
This
the
thing-
last plan you circulated for, right here it says limit of lawn right at the 100.
It has 2 limits of lawn.
Yeah. Well,
It-
it's got on the 100 and then there's another one back, you're right.
Yeah, on the erosion control barrier.
So I was not part of the original approval, so I don't know what you all approved.
What that plan seems to be our proposed septic. I don't know what date that plan has or when that was dated.
Wouldn't that be the same?
No, because we got approval before, I think, for conservation.
I'm sure I asked this before, but I'm gonna ask again.
Yep.
Is there a reason that you couldn't add that square footage on the other side of the house or move the house more out of the 100? Because you're asking for another, what, 28 square feet, and there's already part of the house in the buffer.
Let me show
I
my
think they're
screen.
right at the setback line.
Yeah,
They can go any closer.
yeah, so here we're right at the setback, and setback is measured from the eave of the house, so we're at 41.5 feet. So we're already pushing it here from the setback.
You know, one thing, Joyce, maybe you can advise on this, that we've had this situation before where ZBA says, well, you have to honor the setback, but then there's the expectation that you don't have to comply with the wetland setbacks. Is there any state law that says that, you know, the setbacks from the property line are more important to enforce than, or legally must be enforced, whereas the wetland setbacks don't have to be?
So again, I wasn't really part of, I know that you went through a lot of work to get this approved the first time.
Yeah,
Just at my review, you managed to keep them out of the 50 quite by extra and minimize their activity within the 100. So they are adhering to your regulation. So well, I hear your concern. They're not extending into the 50, I guess was what I'm trying to say.
yeah, but I think the issue here was that it was completely undisturbed buffer. It's not similar to most of our applicants where the buffer has already been substantially disturbed.
Again, I know that you went through a lot of work to approve this, so.
Yeah, I think part of what was discussed for the original was that's why we have so much enhancement plantings, because if you go to that site right now, there's mostly pines, and you can see that we're significantly enhancing that whole planting area, which was like I believe was the whole point of contention, that much, how much plantings were going to be done. Because the client is going to spend several thousands just in all the plantings that he's going to add, and on top of that, the enhanced ground cover within that buffer zone.
Yeah, I think that was because there was something like a dozen mature trees that were removed. So it was mitigation for that.
It was a combination of mitigation.
Yeah,
To your point, Carol, I'd say the setbacks are more prescribed, are more specific in the bylaws and the regulations than 100-foot line. That's not in our regulations as a no build zone. So therefore, the setback does take precedent over it in terms of literally how these things are worded. We don't have a no build zone that goes out to 100 feet. So I think that's why, in terms of the relative weight that those distances hold. Yeah, I guess the shy of the fact that whether there was a typo in the plan on this definition of limit of lawn. Whether I think, if I remember right, given that the color, I think of what was going to be lawn. Sort of would prevail over that limit of lawn words that are by maybe a typo.
Yeah.
I think that's my sense of where we were on that, given that the color prevailed. And these things were busy, so we didn't notice every little thing. I guess the ground cover, I guess in terms of the change that's being proposed, if we accept what we had from before, the extra 28 square feet compared to, I guess, basically what I think would, the ground cover of 720 should provide a better buffer zone properties than the lawn from before. So I would say in terms of the net impact of these changes here, that this, if anything, is of benefit from a wetland perspective, these changes in net is my view. I don't know if other people feel differently or agree.
So for the 28 square feet, they're giving up what was originally going to be 720 square feet of lawn, is that?
That's what I see, that's what I
Yes.
see here, or
Okay.
maybe it's less because there's a path there. Whether you took out the path from that area, that's, even if that was whatever. a
For that
50,
path, we try
60.
to minimize the impact as much as possible, and to not put like a paver path, so we can try to maximize that impervious area. in
Even-
between pavers.
But even if the paver's there, that that it's still a significant multiplier there. So I feel like if anything, this could be an improvement from a wetlands perspective. What do other people think?
I agree.
I agree. Jinx.
Matt, Carol,
As long as that's native ground cover, I don't,
and it's dense enough, I guess, basically.
yeah.
Or whether, is that gonna be, is there gonna be anything in between? I mean, I guess these low cedars do spread out. I guess the question is, until they flesh out, is there gonna be some sort of what will be on the ground? I assume there's gonna be, I don't know what size stock is gonna be put in there. Is that something that you specify anywhere?
Well, the ground cedar is usually plugs that we would put in.
The ground cedar?
Yeah,
Oh, I guess maybe I'm thinking of some other plant. So what density of plugs are you gonna do and what's it gonna look like until it fleshes out?
How are you gonna stabilize the earth there while everything is filling in, I think is the question.
okay, got it.
Thank you, Joyce.
See. That wasn't anything that was specified by the Shang. So while it stabilizes, I guess we could.
So what about, I'm asking this of the commission, so you wouldn't want bark mulch or wood chips, but what about like composted leaves?
Yeah. Leaf mulch is always great.
And that might look better. So I'd try and get it more natural.
Right.
So leaf mulch, not leaf compost.
Whatever Joyce.
Either one,
Yeah.
yeah.
What are we talking about? Let's be specific. So we're gonna,
So leaves that have broken, not just leaves, but leaves that have been composted a little bit.
is that a product? Is that a product that you can buy?
Yeah.
You
I
can get it,
had a dump truck put a bunch of that next to my driveway.
And what is it called specifically?
Leaf
what
mulch?
did you call-
Yeah, whatever.
composted leaves, what did you call
Yeah.
it? Funny.
Something like that. I don't remember. Yeah,
Okay.
they're all
It's
chopped
called
up
leaf
small and they're
compost.
partially composted.
Yeah, I
You
got,
can, I Googled it, it's leaf compost.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lee.
No problem. Glad I can help.
yeah.
Really nice looking.
Yeah, I had 8 yards of it dumped in my yard and it looks really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, leaf compost.
Perfect.
Does that work for you, Lee? To,
Sounds great. Sounds perfect.
Okay, and how many, and what's the density? Normally we get very specific about these things. What's the plugs like in terms of some density of that, so we get some good coverage? In some time, is there any specificity that we could put there? Or that we have to look up online too?
I don't.
Probably have
See.
probably have to
Never
look
brought up
online and
before, so I don't
specify
know.
what nursery recommendations are for the best survival rate for these cedar plugs.
Is that something that the agent can agree
Right.
to on our behalf?
yeah, why don't I work with Francis and Deshang before we issue the order and come up with some kind of language?
Okay, good.
That works.
Okay, I like that answer. And we'll come up with appropriate density and we'll have the leaf compost, as I guess we now know it is. And,
Yep.
and,
And we're
And
gonna
I'll make sure
change
to
it.
remove those typos from the plan. So we're clear on that.
and you'll change the limit of work. Yeah, the limit of lawn has to be moved in a few places.
Yep.
What do other people think? Are all people okay with this as a minor amendment?
Yes.
Carol?
Yeah, I mean, in general, do I think this overall is a net improvement for the wetlands? No. But it seems like this is the best we can do.
Okay. When you say overall, meaning the whole project, not just these.
Yeah,
changes.
Yeah,
Okay,
the whole
Gotcha.
project. I mean, an undisturbed area obviously is much better.
Okay,
Outside of the 100.
now, let's see, this is a hearing. So I guess I will close the hearing and then we'll have some,
Any abutters? I can't, there's
I
nobody.
don't see anybody.
Nobody else is here.
So this is a hearing. Because we already, do we have to vote that this is, oh, I guess it's a whole hearing, so it's not a minor or major issue.
No,
Okay, it's just a hearing. Okay, then I move to close the hearing.
second.
Okay, any further discussion? Michael, I, Matt,
Aye.
Jacob,
I,
Carol,
I,
Courtney.
Aye.
Okay, hearing is closed. 5-0 close hearing. I move that we approve the new house layout with that the addition of 28 square feet of impervious surface in the outer buffer zone is mitigated by the conversion of about 700 square feet of lawn to a cedar leaf compost ground cover. And that this project is not, I don't think it reduces, and that the project is not any closer to the wetlands than the previous project approved design. That cover it?
are you saying that, you said it's no closer to the wetland. It is closer, but are you saying there's not a net loss of habitat than the previous design? That would be more accurate, I think.
I think he's saying the limit of work isn't any closer.
Right, that the house itself isn't any closer. And
No,
I,
the house is closer.
oh,
Yeah,
it
it's
is-
closer.
oh, because of that, okay, but there's no, okay,
The lands, it's the change in the landscaping.
right, exactly, okay, so what was, I accept that change, whatever Carol said.
I don't remember what I said, but maybe Joyce remembered. Or
Yeah,
Deb.
yeah.
Okay,
I didn't write anything about the house. I was just writing about your
the square
mitigating
footage,
house.
700 square feet, and
Yeah.
and there's less alteration of or what was it, whatever Carol said about
You
the
could say something like the conversion of lawn to natural
Right.
habitat minimizes impact.
impact, okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I think we twisted around and we have a motion here. Okay. Did I get a second?
second.
Finally. And any further discussion? Okay. Michael, I, roll call vote. Michael, I, Matt,
Aye.
Carol,
I,
Jacob,
I,
Courtney.
Aye.
Okay. Lee, have fun building.
So
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
we're gonna issue an amended order, but the amended order is going to reference everything that was in the original order. So you're still gonna have to go through both orders, plus recognizing what we've changed tonight.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, when does
Thank you all.
construction start? Yeah, no, you don't have to answer that. Yeah, okay,
Hopefully this summer.
okay,
Hopefully.
good luck with it.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Okay, so we're through with this. And we have, wow. I guess we thought, well, I guess at the time we have 24 minutes before our next, oh yes, let's do a discussion here. There's no more site issues, done the approvals. RDA versus NOI. Let's
Michael, my main thing there is just, let's pull that up, let's review it again. I just want to be as clear as possible that we're agreeing on what the standards are.
okay. Is it in the meeting here? Is it here or is it the thing that in the last meeting? Where is the thing that you're referencing,
I
Carol?
think it was, I thought I.
Did we have it at our last meeting?
No, it was in the, there's a.
It's in the regs
folder with a
thing?
bunch of background information. Sorry, I didn't. No, it's, under just the document directory altogether, I think.
Under,
It's probably regs DEP guidance.
let's see. RDA and DOA and negative determination regulation.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. I'll share my screen. And where is this document from?
I think I put it in here. I believe it was from the Environmental Handbook for Massachusetts Conservation Commissioners, 8th edition.
Oh yeah, I should give you guys the password and do people look at that? I can give you a username and password for that.
You can also get a printed version, I think, when you go to, when they have the physical MACC conference, it's great. You can buy a lot of stuff like that there.
Okay.
Okay, so I tried to summarize this at the beginning, to say under Sherborn regulations, we would use a negative determination when the proposed project will have minimal impact on resource areas. And then this is where it says under Massachusetts regulations, use them for, this is what the guidance is from the state, where it's obvious that compliance will protect, with simple conditions will protect the resource areas if there are only 2 or 3 conditions. And then there are these criteria, if you can keep going down, please. There's this table, which I thought was pretty interesting. The criteria that qualify for a negative DOA. So if the area of alteration is the lesser of 10% of the buffer zone or 5,000 square feet, if we've left at least 50 feet of undisturbed vegetation, conforming to DEP stormwater management, the buffer does not border on an outstanding resource water, such as a certified vernal pool, a tributary to a public water supply, or certain ACEC. So I actually want to bring up that, yeah, vernal pools, I mean, people's vernal pools are not always certified, but if we know there's a vernal pool, that would be a reason to be more careful, to just exert more care and perhaps say, okay, you know what, we want to have an NOI here. If the buffer zone does not contain estimated wildlife habitat, we very seldom come across that, but there are parts of town. And if erosion and sedimentation controls are provided. I did want to point out, this is probably why I've brought this up again, is that this is the paragraph, 2 paragraphs above it, is that it describes this idea that the commission takes a risk when a negative DOA is issued, and you should weigh the decision carefully. A negative determination with conditions should be issued very cautiously. So if there are more than 2 or 3 conditions, a positive DOA should be issued and an NOA required. And the reasoning they give in the handbook is it's hard for a commission to go to a judge for enforcement, if we ever have to enforce it, when we've already said that a permit isn't required. So if we think there's any possibility that we're going to perhaps eventually need enforcement, I think an example, that's why they have an example like a vernal pool, right? If somebody fills a vernal pool, we'd want to be able to enforce that. Or if they siltate, a bunch of siltation goes into a vernal pool or a tributary to a public water supply, etc. So every once in a while, I know I've said, okay, how many conditions are there? Are there only 2 or 3 conditions? And it's specifically referencing the guidance from the state. And I guess I just feel like it's helpful to stick with guidance we're getting from the state. Obviously, they've had experience with commissions being in a difficult position when they've issued a negative determination, and then, you know, they're trying to get something enforced. Or that would be my, I think that's why they put this in here. It does say here that small projects may not have an adverse effect on resource areas if simple erosion control measures are taken. A negative DOA may be issued with conditions in such cases with simple conditions. So again, it goes back to are they simple conditions or are there going to be multiple conditions?
I would say that for most, I mean, right, I think we probably might come down to different places in the gray area here for maybe a few RDAs a year that go beyond, I guess. And plus I would like to, and I think we've also, in terms of just complying with it, I think we have relatively, I mean, the enforcement issue is always present, even with NOIs. I guess for me, I have no problems with these. I just know that there's probably a few times a year that I probably would feel appropriate to maybe dance a little on the edge of whether there's more than 3 conditions. And I've always viewed this as generally that we do that, and that's what we do. And that I'd say the criteria there, I don't think any of our things have really not met these criteria in the figure, except maybe there's one case I could think of recently, but I'd say for the most part, even areas that we might give a little bit more, but I think it's good to review. I think that we generally do follow this. And there's going to be a few times when I think the commissioners might not all agree as to whether it falls there, but I think it's quite rare or not frequent, depending on how you want to put it. But I think, yeah, we meet most of these. I can think of some where we don't, but they were done for various reasons. One of the things also in terms of, for me, I think what we put in there and go over with Joyce is that we generally have, and I guess it'd be more explicit in ones that have a little bit conditions that are not all so simple, that we get to inspect. I can't remember, Joyce, how we word that in some of our things there, or whether we have to put that more explicitly in a few of our DOAs that we have, the agent has the right to go and inspect compliance with the conditions.
So I do have, we have been requesting that when the erosion control is installed, that we get a phone call, and I have been getting that for the RDAs, particularly for septic systems. So we do a lot of this with septic systems because you put together a really good list of when a septic system could use a request for determination of applicability, what conditions you would do to approve that. And the big strong one was it's in existing lawn. So I automatically, so I expanded the conditions to try for clarity for the request for the determinations of applicability. So I already have more than 3 numbers, but it's usually nothing more than just telling people, there's no tree removal. There's no tree removal permitted for this, or any disturbed areas will be restored in kind. So they're kind of general conditions, but I typically have like 5. And the first one is just, the project description and what we're allowing. So really, there are only a couple of conditions we've made on it, but if I could just briefly share, just to show you.
Let me stop.
Don't lose your place though. So, I mean, this is kind of what I've been putting together just to be stressing that they, read the conditions for a determination, because I felt like we were just submitting the forms, that the conditions weren't jumping out at people. So I felt if we could word it a little stronger with the special conditions at the end of that form, that might help guide people along. So I don't feel like I'm adding any more conditions. I'm just kind of spelling things out about tree removal or.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that, right, is the project description. So it's very clear to people what they're getting permission to do. Is that a condition or is that, right?
This was just for soil testing. There was no erosion control on this one.
Yeah,
If you call, so there's no there's no police, you have to call ahead. That is typically a condition if there is erosion control in place, and they do call.
Okay.
So we have people call all the time saying that they have a project that comes in. It was either a garage addition or putting up a shed or whatever we have, and maybe, and I don't try to put more burden on people, but you came up with a list of things that are important to you with respect to putting septic systems in the buffer zone. Perhaps we could do the same thing for activities under a determination of applicability, like nothing within 50 feet. Existing altered area, something that would help guide people.
mm-hmm.
Or you have every right when you get a request for determination of applicability to say, I'm sorry, this needs a notice of intent.
Right, I mean, right, we could just sort of leave it where we just have to agree, or some majority has to figure out that this is big enough of a project that we, or whatever complexity that we want to do an NOI.
Right, so Deborah and I do guide people, like there are certain things that we know for certain are going to be notice of intent. So we do direct people in a certain way. But sometimes, we just don't know how you might feel about something.
Right. I guess the question is, right, I mean, I'm not sure how much we disagree that much amongst us all, other than that there are some areas. And the question is whether we want to have something more about that inspection of erosion control is different from inspection of how the finished project looks, if there are some conditions.
Well, don't usually get when they're done with the request, when they're done with the septic or whatever we have done. I don't get called to come and inspect.
Do we want to have that without can we make that as just part of the cover letter, or do we?
Yeah, we can do that.
The difference between one of the differences between the RDIA and the NOI. I mean, with an RDA, do they have to have an order of compliance?
No,
So we have no mechanism to make sure that they've done it.
no.
That's why I'm suggesting we get that inspection, and I think that for anything that's significant, or none of them are significant. For anything that's more than the smallest, we can get the final look to see, and then it becomes an enforcement order. If there's some impact on the wetlands that we're seeing, then that can simply be dealt with, not simple, but can be dealt with via an enforcement order or a violation letter or something like that. That we still have that recourse, which is what we end up is, and go from there. But I guess maybe shy of just pulling this kind of thing up, and we just have to hash it out the next time we get an RDA that dances on the edge. We just have to, we can come back to this document and bat it around to figure out what
Well,
it
and we
is.
do, I will be more careful about advising people that, if it's close to what we think would be, the last RDA we did, I felt was close to be going one way or the other. And everybody was warned that, when you get into the meeting, people are gonna make a decision of whether or not an RDA is suitable for this application.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're that far off from what we need to do. It's just a matter of whether we get a consensus versus the fact that we'll just have some difference of opinion. And either might go to an RDA or go to an NOI or stay as an RDA based on whatever the majority of the commission hearing it decides. I don't think I guess I probably myself wouldn't be that disturbed either way, depending on them, because it's probably in the gray area anyway, if it goes contrary to what I might think. But
And if something is, if people are very concerned about timeframes, then we simply advise them, then if you want to be safe, go notice of intent.
I think the other thing that's, I think you're right, Michael, that it's a good idea to write something into the RDA, if we do it under an RDA, to say that we can inspect. But the advantage, obviously, of doing it in the NOI is that there's a motivation by the homeowner to get certified that they've completed the order of conditions, right? And so I think especially, I mean, I think that's why there is this dividing line between RDAs with just a few conditions where the assumption is, what, probably people will comply, it's simple, versus something that's slightly more complicated where you want to say, okay, you know what, let's just do it under the NOI, and then we have a little bit more control. They feel a little bit more of an obligation to comply with the conditions. And rather than, I mean, it's so rare, and we don't usually like to tell people they're doing a violation. It's kind of simpler in some ways to just, it feels like to me, to just go back and say, this is the order of conditions, and how's it going with the compliance there? That's like a nicer way to deal with people than trying to figure out. And most of the time we can't tell if people are violating anyway, because it's like in their backyard,
I would just say that besides being able to look at the end, we just have to flag internally for our processes. When there's a more complicated RDA, which is still not that complicated, because otherwise it would be an NOI, that we just flag it internally that the agent has to go check on it. Which is the same thing, the order of condition, a certificate of compliance forces that, but it's still a time burden. So we just have to go internally monitor those kind of DOAs that somehow we're a little bit more concerned about. And I think it'll be that, and we could try that out and see when we do one of those. And we can note whether like the one with one of the recent ones that we did on the possible vernal pool in the garage or whatever, whether we go back and look at that and see how that went. But I think in the end, we'll go left with the same process anyway, either way, if somebody's not going to do the project well. But let's try it out. I mean, I'm not sure how much, for me, it's mainly a matter of the change to that we just cognizant of something of a certain kind of DOA that we might be negative, but that we want to make sure that the agent gets to look at it and then see how that works. It's something the agent would have to do anyway if it was an NOI. So let's just see how that works out as a little bit of a change in our process. And besides coming back to this and wrestling with this, the guidance document, when we feel like we're coming back to something that's people are feeling both ways, and we'll figure out what the majority
I
comes
mean,
down.
the other thing is like, when I look at a condition here, like a criteria that they say leaving at least 50 feet of undisturbed vegetation. That might be something that we inform people, you know, if you're leaving 50 feet of undisturbed vegetation, then we can approve this under an RDA. It's a simplified process. I don't know.
The problem is that
There's a
it
little
doesn't
bit of
work.
motivation there, maybe.
Yeah, but I think it also becomes a problem if it's already altered 50-foot, no alteration zone. It's already altered, let's say, and they're doing something quite minor in it. Then but I guess we've rarely done, I think most of our IDAs are out of the no alteration zone, but I can't tell what we mean. I'm not sure I would hold to this absolutely. If it was a very small project and it was already lawn in the 50-foot buffer.
Mhm.
And it was a very minor project, I wouldn't want to feel that I'd have to be rigid. I'd want to judge it based on the scale of the project. Is there not a steep slope? Is it it's going to be restored? It's a temporary, whatever. So
Right.
that's all. That's why I don't want to get too fixed on some of these things and I think we do a reasonable job of sorting it out with the occasional disagreement. The other
So,
people-
Anyway, thank you for taking the time. I mean, I think that I just want to be sure that we're
Right,
knowing what the state guidance is. It becomes a basis for discussion when we do have discussion.
agreed. Do other people want to talk besides the two of us, batting it back and forth?
I'm less concerned about the number of conditions. I think having the example that Joyce showed up still fits within the spirit of that guidance. So I don't have a concern there, and I do like the idea of having the conditions about having a follow-up visit towards the end. Especially, I think that will help, at least in the cases where there's questions or where people want to do the right thing. It'll help in those cases anyway.
Any other commissioners want to say anything? Before I can't resist if Matt wanted to chime in.
Have at it, Michael. I've been waiting the last 3-4 minutes.
I don't know if you wanted to give any 2 cents, Matt, just on a whole other topic. Feel free. If not, we have 7 minutes. Let's see, I think our hearing's at 9:10, or what is it? Oh, it's 9:10. Oh, so we have 2 minutes. Okay. Unless somebody has any break there, we have a 2-minute break. I'm gonna go get something to drink. And I'll be back in a minute.
This is where Dover Sherborn Cable TV puts in like a brief interlude.
Hey, Matt, oops, sorry. I was gonna say one silly thing
Hi.
before the hearing starts of I just noticed that one of the books I often use every year is got your name on it.
Yes, yes, indeed.
I was looking at it saying, wow, this guy's good. So thank you for that book. I like using it, although I can't figure out a bunch of stuff in my in my little swamp here.
Oh, yeah.
I got a little bug that's in a tube. It's in a little, I could probably look it up. It's in a little, very small twig of about maybe a half an inch, 3/4 of an inch long that this body sort of pops in and out of.
Oh,
Oh,
caddisfly.
that is the caddisfly.
It sounds like it.
Okay, it's got a sort of a round head with a, you see about 4 legs come out.
Yeah. It's like a long, skinny tube.
Yeah,
that
it's
it
like a tube, yeah.
Yeah, the Phrygineid caddisfly.
Oh, so will it grow out of that into a, how long? Oh, so.
They metamorphose into the adults are very moth-like.
Right, that's what I think.
Yeah. Caddisflies are there's hundreds and hundreds of species, but a couple show up in vernal pools.
Yeah, right. No, I've been watching this thing pop in and out, waiting to see whether it changes, but I guess it takes a while to change.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll have to put it back before I see anything transform. But,
So I apologize. I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself there. I've got a brand new computer today and it won't do anything. So I'm stuck on my phone and I have no access to files or anything else. So
well, congratulations on moving forward.
yes, indeed. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Carol is not back. Matt's not back.
Yeah, I'm here.
Carol's back. Hey, Matt, are you there? Reach into his office there. Oh, it looks like that's actually a downtown Boston view in the backdrop there, unless it's faked. But I guess we have a quorum here. I'll give him a few more seconds. It's 9:12 and it's getting late. I have to get up early for some meetings, so I don't want to have too long a night. Okay, I'm going to reopen the continued public hearing on Sherborn wetland regulations, discussion of possible amendments to the Sherborn wetland regulations. Okay, so we've heard, okay, Matt's looking nicely. I have to admit, you're the best dressed one here, Matt. I have to comment. I mean,
No, I
yeah.
still haven't gone home yet, so give me
Yes,
an hour.
I know, we noticed the background drop there and I was commenting that, yes, that looks like an office.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is.
And interesting view. Okay, so let's see. Now, last time we had Matt present a draft of some things here, and I don't know whether people got to study more of let's see here. I'm going to do a share screen rather than stare at you guys. Let's see if this works. Okay, on the left here is the document Matt gave us last time and walked through. On the right side, I actually copied in, it's a document that copies some of the areas of the handbook, that the guidebook that he references in his document. We could look at things. I don't know whether the rest of you did your homework and read through all of this. And then meanwhile, we also have our regs, which is where essentially in our regulations, we have a current section 5 that's called performance standards. And then it's sort of general. And then we have things like the inner buffer zone, which is the tricky thing. We have that work, we have fill, stumps. Discharge, oh, we have discharge from water filtering. I guess we can put that in the swimming pool thing here. We have to remember to look at the 5.5 for our pool. But I'm not showing that here. So this, but what we have here is, as we see here, we have some intro and overview. And the question is how much, what I would say, trying to think about how we orient ourselves towards getting a product that we can refine. That whether this thing here, like the intro and overview, talks a lot about that some of this is good intro for us, and whether we might want to put some of that in our upfront in our section 4, where we define jurisdictional areas. And there's a 4.2 called buffer zones. That, for the sake of discussion, I don't know if we need to do it now, but that some of this language here, I would suggest that might go into section 4.2 of our buffer zones. I'm not sure whether to say to people that each one of you read through this and highlight what you think might be worth and send it in to me, what you think might be useful to put in something like 4.2 about buffer zones, because after that, just doing a quick thing, we have some definitional work. We have this burden of proof, which is a new section we already have somewhere. But then in terms of our performance standards, he's given us this draft here of a new 5.2, which is on the whole buffer zone, whereas our current 5.2 is just a no alteration zone, no alteration zone. But it has a nice preamble. Part of the reason to reflect on the earlier intro is whether it has things that we want to either put here or somewhere else, versus whether how we feel about the this preamble. I've highlighted, it was highlighted here by him. But there's a major issue for us to discuss, which I'd like to get into tonight, is about just what a little bit of what Carol brought up earlier, about whether the 100-foot zone for unaltered buffer zone is really equivalent to a sort of a no alteration zone when it's unaltered. Then there's a set of characteristics here, the definition of critical and boundary things, which on the other side here is 3.1.2, which is key characteristics, and to what extent that we map some of this into here. There's the presumption of significance, and then we have to go through this actual specific performance standards, of which he proposes some, and we already have some. I'd like to, so we have to get down to actually doing something, and whether, we might, I guess I'd like to go and walk through a few issues here towards on the way to actually whether a few of us put together a more detailed draft or some combining of some other things. In this preamble, I don't know whether other people want to make general comments from the commission on what I've just gone through before I just get into an issue right here at the bottom. So that you're also muted, Carol, for the.
Yeah, I guess maybe there's a question also to Matt. Is this the preamble that you're suggesting we add to our own regulations? Is this the wording that is suggested to be added?
Yeah, that first section that Michael referred to, the intro and overview, was really, I kind of drafted that just to provide some context for what we had initially started to attempt to do.
Yeah.
So, to the extent that there's some tasty bits in that could go into the body of regulations, I think fantastic. That's good. I think the more context and framing of your thinking that goes into your regulations, the better, because then you can always refer to that and say, this is why we are making the decision we're making.
Yeah.
Look at our preamble, look at what we've said. And then you refer to that in your decision making, and you refer to that in your orders and special conditions, and it becomes a very solid, defensible decision on any particular project. So to the extent that you go through that document and throw away what you feel is unnecessary, redundant, or what have you, but anything you can load into your regulations that really kind of help a reader understand the commission's thinking is valuable. And that can be a preamble to the entire body of regulations, if it makes sense there, or it can be crafted in just that buffer zone section to say, this is the commission's thinking regarding buffer zones and why we think they're important, and why we have structured the regulations that we've structured, and why we're making decisions that we make. So
I guess I'm trying to figure out, do we have some wording here that we would say is proposed wording? I'd love to get to the point where it's like, okay, this is the proposed wording for us to consider. And if so, is that what we're looking at now?
That's what we're looking at now. That's what I was trying
That
to,
really,
wasn't
this
clear.
really is proposed.
That this is that he proposes, I mean, he has specific definitions that he's proposed, that I was working on a little bit myself, as you see here. And then we have a burden of proof. And we have to go, so we have to go figure out whatever, this burden of proof one, I have to go figure out how that matches in, but these are specific definitions.
Yeah.
And he's given us a specific 5.2. So that's what it's all about, and what we like and don't like about these things. I mean, there are this text up here, and that's what hopefully people are getting to read, that I gotta make it down to the fact that, okay, what do people like and don't like about that specific text? Because you could see here, I was trying to play around with what I thought was preponderance of credible evidence. But looking at the up front here, I guess there's just these initial principles here that we'll see how they get embodied. Like, for example, there may be circumstances where the entire 100 feet buffer zone need not be protected. And
that gets at
right
the discussion you were having at the end of what I came in on, where you've got a small project proposed in a previously altered buffer zone. That's a good example of a scenario where you don't need to try to protect 100 feet.
Right, and that's what's in and when you go down to the performance standards that he's proposing, down below, it's work in undeveloped buffer and work in previously developed. And there's some specifics here that I would want to tweak, but that's what we're getting down to.
Michael, I'm not seeing this actual document, this version of the document on the drive. Is this one that?
Yeah, that's in there.
Here?
I mean, this one has my edits, but it's in there.
I'm not seeing it in this week's. I'm only seeing one version.
It's
of it.
in let's
Is
see.
it in the April 13th folder, or is it?
I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure we moved it unless, I think I put it in there and that, because I sent out an email a few weeks ago about these were files to read. Or that were
Yeah.
put in there.
Yeah,
But
I don't think it's
yeah,
there.
hold on. I'm looking.
I keep refreshing
Well,
that.
it changes new documents. Yeah, it's the fourth document on the list there.
Yeah, but it has a different name.
A different name.
I mean, the file name doesn't have your initials in it.
Oh yeah, this is because it's my working file. But it's the same file, it just doesn't have the track edits that you're looking at the screen now. Whenever
Okay.
you see track edits in this thing here, that's part of what I added in for my own thinking. I just thought I'd put it up to help me talk with everybody. But essentially, it's that file, and where you see a few track edits in that sort of reddish brown, that's just this is just my comments doing my homework.
So just start with goals with respect to adjacent upland resource, just so I know that I'm in the right document. Yeah, okay, thank you.
So it just has my comments, but it's been in the folder for a long time.
No, I know that one has been, but I was looking at your comments, okay.
So coming down to trying to get down to some nitty gritty of I guess I'm going to skip over this. I just want to go to his draft, even though we have to come back to it. He has a preamble here. That is great, I think. And I just want to bat around the idea of where we're thinking, and maybe we don't have to have an absolute decision made tonight, or even when we come up with, because our goal is to come up with a draft of changes that we would then circulate and start a new hearing where we invite other people. I don't see the new draft as having to be definitive on every point if we don't have a consensus, for example, or that we recognize it's a contentious issue. For example, we could have that there are different ways. I don't mind having a draft that we go to the next hearing that says issue to be refined during the next hearing. And this whole issue here of what do we do, the last sentence on this page, and what people think. That we won't have permanent structures within 100 feet. In the case of new lots created after a certain date, which is the way Lincoln has done it or some others, and whether we need to add that it's also if the area is I think I have my track. If unaltered, or even if it's altered buffer zone, we want them to restore it as part of some bargaining. What do people think about for new lots? This kind of extended no alteration zone.
I mean, I would say that it certainly seems to be supported by the bylaw, but at the very least, I think it would be great to include this with undisturbed wetland areas.
Undisturbed buffer zone areas or undisturbed wetland areas. What do you mean?
Undisturbed buffer zone, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think your regulation should, using the Wetlands Protection Act as a model, when significant changes are made, they usually say as of, something that predates our change isn't subject to this.
Oh, yeah. All right.
That was kind of the thinking.
Yeah, no, this is easy. I mean, the date issue is, to me, it is it's a straightforward issue. The question is, do we want to go this far for new lots? Is something that some towns have done. And some towns even have, it's eye-opening to me after how many years I've been on a commission to realize that some towns have buffer zones that are greater than 100 feet. And it's like, wow. There's nothing that places have gone there. I don't think we're in a position, given the makeup of our town, to probably do that. But I'm just curious what other people think. We don't have to resolve it. I just want to get people thinking about these things.
I
Yeah,
I
go on.
actually think it's clearer and less ambiguous if we don't have an altered versus unaltered statement here. And everything,
It could be simpler. It's just a matter of if that's what you want.
right. I mean,
It's,
I think if we're going based on what is an effective buffer zone and what's the right thing to do for the wetlands, it's pretty clear that the 100-foot is sort of errs on the insufficient side. So really what we're trying to do is balance that against the notion that the problem that we have all sorts of existing houses, structures, everything else that's built right up to them, and we can't make things too burdensome for those cases. But the new lot case seems to be a pretty simple delineation to say, here's what we should be doing.
and this is permanent structures, doesn't mean that they couldn't do landscaping or other kind of activities, since structures has a definition of above or below, I can't remember which in this place, that so it's not that they can't do anything, it's just a permanent structure. Which I think Dover might have something like this. What do other people think? Courtney, Matt?
I don't know. I have to think about it more.
Okay. Matt,
Anything on that point?
what's that?
I've got nothing on that.
You know, what do you mean you got nothing? You got no opinion?
No, no, no. I've got a couple questions, but not on that.
Oh, so you would be fine with this?
Well, I don't object to it.
Okay. Do you think it should be worded as is? Should we worry about whether it's altered or unaltered, even though that also muddies the water? Just because what's the definition of, I guess unaltered is, I use that word, but I guess undeveloped or developed, I guess is another term. We'll have to still figure out what term to use if we go that route, or even further down, we have to figure out what terminology to use. So just realize that when I say unaltered or undeveloped, that's the same thing, even though everything's been changed at some point. It's a matter of at what point was it ever changed. So I could sort of see Jacob's point about keeping it clean, and then they can do other things in the buffer zone, but they just can't put a building.
Yeah.
Okay,
I take Jacob's point that I think it is cleaner, and certainly the science tells us that 100 feet is, for some species of amphibians, is actually inadequate, so.
all right. Although, I mean, that's just one of many interests. Obviously, it helps with sort of water quality stuff. You have these impervious areas.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you can mitigate the impervious areas by infiltration things. But okay. So in general, we're leaning this way. Courtney will keep thinking, and we'll all keep thinking. I don't want to belabor this one, other than it's something to come up with that we'll have to revisit before we come up with a draft, and we'll have to revisit it when we have the next hearing and defend it. Or discuss it with others, depending on what we put in. Now, in terms of definition here, I think it's a matter of, there's a list here, not limited to, which begins to, I assume, sort of matches what I assume is in the guidebook. I haven't actually done a one-to-one, and whether we put in the same headings that are in the guidebook. He's got width, slope, soil composition, Yeah, there's all sorts of ways of slicing these. I'm still struggling with how to slice all this stuff of what's information to have. I guess there's all these characteristics here. And then these characteristics here. I'm trying to think of where, there's slope. Key characteristics versus key characteristics. How would you distinguish 3.1.2 from 3.1.3? And whether we need to make a marriage of the two? I'll ask the author.
I wish I had access to the file. I would have to relook at the distinction there to see if I could suss that out.
Okay. So we don't want to waste a lot of time now, but it's essentially somehow there's some set of characteristics here that we want to, there's general ones and then there's subsets of that there's general characteristics.
I think that I think this is something to think through, whether or not that level of specificity wants to go into the regulation, or if that wants to be handled as more of a policy thing, where the regulations really sort of lean on the burden of proof and defining, or making the case that an applicant needs to demonstrate to the commission's satisfaction that the work proposed isn't going to have an adverse effect. And then through policy, you define what you want to hear, what you want to find out about a site. We want a measurement of the slope. We want a measurement of density of vegetation in the buffer zone.
So you wouldn't put them in the I'll just cut you off just as a principle of.
Yep.
The thing that I'm struggling with is to what extent you're arguing not to put that in the regs themselves. Like we could talk about soils, but that soils are critical, or trying to scroll here, soil types. Soil type is important. Do we want to put in there that we want to know erodibility or texture versus in a policy? I guess or the slope, again, it says slope here. Do we want to say we want to know what the maximum and minimum and average, some slopes like that? Do we put that in the regs for specificity? Or
If I look at this list of items, sometimes it'll be useful, but in many cases these will be either not needed or won't help us make decisions, especially for simpler projects. So I would want, if it goes in the regs, I would want it to be conditioned on scope of project, or something that says, here's things we may ask for, depending on the.
no, I agree about doing that. The question is, do we even have the may ask in the regs? Do we give examples of things we want to know about a soil type to help us, because soil type just helps us maybe figure out how the impacts work. Do we want to say what it is we want to know about the soils in the regs? I guess, like, do we want to know the slope, as you started saying, Matt? You're arguing that that level of specificity is best left in a guidance policy.
That's what I think, because it would be very difficult to craft a set of standards that say that are going to address any possible condition that might be present itself. Right. So I think if the regulations say, that the applicant needs to demonstrate to the satisfaction of the commission that the work is not going to have an adverse effect on the wetland. And then you define what that means in policy. Then I think you have a more flexible tool to say, we expect you to characterize the slope of the buffer zone. And this is how and then you can use the policy to sort of work out how you're going to interpret those data that are presented to you. I guess that's what I'm leaning away from is trying to come up with regulatory language that does the interpretation of what a steep slope means.
Right. In the sense that it creates more possible infiltration, erosion, whatever. We're not quantifying it. We're just saying that the slope is important for dealing with water filtration and quality issues, as well as avoiding, or it has an impact on erosion.
Right.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of coming back to this general principle that we're talking about of what to put where. This is what we have now, everybody, in our regs now for the inner buffer zone. And it's basically to overcome the presumption, you have to provide evidence will not significantly affect each of these areas. Now, it could affect one or two of them, and I don't know whether that's whether each one of these is a veto power. I guess I've never thought of it before, whether the way this is worded, because this is something that we would be either keeping or replacing, somehow integrating into this new work, is like not significantly alter shading into the wetlands and water bodies and water temperature regimes. Right, I guess it's in a policy document that we'd have to figure out what significantly means with regard to shading. I've always struggled with people, whether that's where you get into, okay, you've reduced the crown of trees in the inner buffer by some percentage, but you have so many thousand square feet of inner buffer, and you've reduced the crown in 5% of it. Is that a significant impact? I don't know where we go. But then that's just looking at one thing in isolation, and whether it's really the confluence of all of these things that we're looking at, or how it all sums up, or whether we say, I don't know. I just worry about how to implement even what we have now. I don't know what others think of whether this is, I'm seeing a problem where there isn't one or not, what other people think of what we have now, even, and what we would want to end up with.
Well, Michael, the one thing I would say is that, the part that we looked at before this just feels like it really strengthens kind of our philosophy about
Oh yeah, that's a no-brainer. The question is, what's the next level down?
how much detail you want to get into.
Yeah, and how do we do this? We're
Yeah.
we're all on the same page on that. Just a matter of how do we then carry this out?
I guess the main thing I thought of, Matt, when you said putting some of this detail into policies, I'm not sure that we've done that before. So, but maybe I don't know, Courtney or Michael can remind me, if we. If
We
we.
haven't done it, but we could,
think
we
I
could always
remember
do it.
seeing
It gives
these things
flexibility.
separate.
It's like the tree policy. I mean, we have things that we do external that's a little bit different. And we could, we could have a mitigation planting policy, like there's one proposed at one point, and we've had that in the past, proposed. But I have no problem with doing that, because I think it gives a place to give a lot of guidance to people as to
Right.
how we think, like slope. Like, okay, if it's, I mean, I like the example here in the guidebook that a 10% slope is effective, most effective for improving water quality. And I'm sitting there go, boy, I gotta go back and look at how that works. I'm usually worried about when it's 10 or 15% or more, that I'm worried about that you have to look at whether it's gonna create too much runoff, but it depends then on the mixture of what the soils are and what the vegetation is. To me, it's the nexus of slope, soils, and vegetation that would determine whether we're hunky-dory or not, or whether it's and how even, and what the source of the water is like, whether it's channelized or not. So yeah, it gets kind of hairy.
Right.
Well, and also each site is individual, which is what you're basically saying.
Yeah, and but also even how to identify, even when I break it down into all these factors, which I love to do, but then I figure out how to, that I'm going to apply that kind of thinking I just did now about how slope and flow pattern and vegetation and soils overlap, to see whether there's an issue or not. Or here it's alter, but even when I look at what we currently have that I have on the screen, alter hydrology, peak discharge, runoff volume, infiltration. I mean, this is maybe more for larger projects. And larger projects to date avoid our regs anyway, but to the extent that there's a large project. But we talked ourselves into this thing back in February and back in 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when we amended the okay, where are we going with this? Maybe we start with this kind of higher level characteristics. And then maybe we just start with the idea of something more principled in the regs and this kind of policy thing. And we could always fold policy stuff into the regs, or we can go the other way too. But I'm trying to figure out how to move us forward besides me just talking.
Michael, are you thinking that maybe for the 50 to 100 buffer zone, we should have something parallel to 5.2? Is that kind of what you're saying? And then what level of detail should be in that? And if that's what we're thinking, I mean, Matt, maybe you can give some advice on that.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm actually putting it open whether we like what 5.2 does versus what he's got, where he has much more higher level performance standards at the end of his document. If people read that I would that he's just looking at the buffer zone as a whole, but we could actually.
I like the higher level ones, honestly, because with the list that we have in 5.2 now, what we see applicants doing is they list these out and they say, this won't be impacted because I say so. And we get a big list of those, which isn't particularly helpful.
That's why I like the specificity, but whether the policy would help that. I mean, I could just, that's why I'm not sure I like the list here versus the list of that's in the handbook, where it's like vegetation type. It's like, okay, that's
I like the specificity in the please describe what's there, please describe what you're proposing. But I don't like the specificity in the demonstrate you're not going to impact all of these 20 different things, because I think that's for us to evaluate.
Hmm.
I agree with that.
So that comes back to, that's right, a lot of this here. If I switch back to the other, but yeah, I'm trying to think of these things here. That I guess we need to basically say more. I don't know what happened to my video, but whatever. I'll come back. Right, whether this list here is not that useful, as you said, Jacob, until we get to breaking it down into what it is we're looking for specifically about shading. That's basically, we want to know what are you going to do to vegetation?
I think there's something different between, to Jacob's point, saying thou shalt not alter shading, which is easy for everybody says, we're not going to alter it. It's going to be fine. There's not going to be any change. That we see that everywhere. Versus saying, thou shalt tell us what the current conditions are and compare that to what the conditions will be when you finish the work you're proposing. And then we can make a decision as a commission whether we think that represents an alteration.
Yeah,
And,
that
you know,
comes back to, okay, yeah, no, that comes back to when you had these things here of burden of proof.
yeah, exactly.
When you had these things here, we started, I was talking with Jacob, and we started making notes about which one of these are existing and post. And whether we basically, maybe our next step is to come up with a list of how you characterize existing conditions against maybe on the other side of vegetation, roughness or whatever, maybe these general characteristics here, some subset of 3.1.3 or 3.1.4 against, let's say 4 has, that's more impacts. Okay, so maybe 3.1.3 on this side here. Whether against these, we come up with what it is we want to know for existing and what it is we want to know for post-project. And whether that level of specificity would go in the regs of, like for vegetation type, play one out. Vegetation quality and type. We want to know what's there existing. We want to know what's going to be there afterwards. But even that is going to be, well, there's going to be this many square feet of this that's going to go. How do we even ask for this? How does this even get summarized? Is what I'm going to struggle with, because right now we just say alteration and not altered. But for vegetation type, what are we specifically going to ask for? And is it going to be in the regs or a policy about vegetation type and quality and whatever?
Michael, what about, when I'm looking at what Matt gave us, he said detailed evaluation of adjacent wetland characteristics, including, and then there's 3 bullets in a row that refer the applicant to the MACC buffer zone handbook. And I will admit, I didn't pull that out. So maybe Matt, you can tell us, would they find the equivalent of what Michael is talking?
This is what I have here. I pulled it out for everybody.
Oh, well, I think it's fine to reference it, because otherwise this will get very long.
No, I don't think we can't, I don't think our regs can reference an external document like this. I wouldn't want to do that. I think it came up in another discussion of a bylaw or regs in another part of town. I think we need to figure out what it is we want here. That's why I created this other document that I put in the site there, is that I brought out every single document that he referenced here.
Oh, I see.
I created this. That's why I called it the hand. That's why I called it the excerpts. And what I put in the email, not to get a little snarky to everybody, is that I did this purposely to match what he did. And we have problems with what's the difference between 3.1.2 and 3.1.3.
Gotcha.
Because they're both, the question is whether we have these factors here. And for existing conditions, going back to that issue, do we want to have, so we don't get this kind of like, I guess if we don't ask that you haven't changed, I guess the general principle is we don't want to know that it's significantly impacted. We can just say that we want to know something about the existing vegetation conditions and what the post-vegetation conditions are. Question is, do we say in the regs anything about what specifically we want to know, or that what goes in a policy? But we will just change the orientation of this document to saying we want to know existing conditions and post-project conditions. And as Jacob and Matt said, then we could decide if they're going to do, I mean, they could still make an argument that it's fine, but we need to have that existing and post along with whatever they say that's it's not going to make a significant difference. Is a difference in orientation from what we have now. Does that make sense to move towards?
That's to me.
So the question is whether these 3.1.2 question is how much detail do we put in about how do you ask for the existing versus post project? And
This, as I mentioned before, this is the area where I think it depends on the scope and scale of the project. I don't want to ask for too much information for really simple projects.
right. So how do we?
So one way potentially to address that or to account for that is to have some thresholds. You know, like if you say on your site, what is the total amount of buffer zone? You know, what is the total amount of square footage, whatever your measure is? You know, and if your project proposes more than 10% alteration of all the available buffer zone, we want X amount of information. If your proposal is constrained to less than 5% of the available buffer zone, we need less information. You know, that kind of thing. You could potentially set some thresholds wherever the commission's comfortable. You know, maybe a quote unquote simple project is one that alters up to 25% of available buffer zone on a site, for instance.
Or you can have square footage. Yeah, it gets, I always find those numbers hang you up sometimes, but maybe we can't avoid them.
Yeah,
An absolute versus percentage have to both go in there because percentage numbers can be a little weird.
They can be manipulated, and like how you look at things, and you get people who present just weird evaluations that you're then scratching your head trying to understand what they're actually looking at. So I agree, but it might be a way to kind of get at Jacob's thinking here of, you know, there's a scale of impact that is going to be less of a concern.
Okay.
Right. And so is there a number? Is there a metric? Is there a metric you can request or demand that allows you to make that determination that yes, this is quote unquote a small project, a small buffer zone project? Or, you know, is there some objective measure that an applicant can be required to provide the commission that gives you the tool to say, yes, this falls into this category or it falls into that category?
it may be a combination of area and percentages, but also is the area under consideration already a lawn or something of that nature.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're gonna come up with something that's three-pronged. Like those three criteria. And there'll always be flexibility in the language of saying that maybe we need more for one, or we could take less for another. That we can do that. But then then I'll press on to say, okay, let's say it's a project that's doing a lot. Let's say it's in the significant alteration arena, however we define it. Then I'll come back to, are we gonna have in our regs the for soils or vegetation, I'll just stick with two of them here on the right and say, are we going to say we want to hear about soils pre and post? Now, in that case, there's no post. I mean, it could be post if they're doing fill, but we basically just want to know what the existing conditions are for that so that we can judge whether some of the other impacts are going to be a problem in terms of, and do we specify things like, I mean, this, that isn't even here. I guess we're like under soils. There's not even the kind of, the other kind of stuff like this. That's why I see these two categories that we're struggling with here in the guide book. If you go down to soils down below, you get into texture. Do we want to know texture? Do we put in texture or erodibility? Do we want to say under soils? For a large project, we want to know about erodibility, texture. Do we really need depth? Or we could always ask for it, but do we want to actually put in two categories or three under soils in our regs? Or do we soften it and say, such as erodibility and texture? We want to know, and that's when we would just have existing condition. And they would have to go and then I don't know how much the soils would vary over the area, but we could deal with that in an actual hearing. But is that the example that for soils, we'd have some specificity. For vegetation, we want to know cover type, density, height. And whether, let's see, vegetation down here, condition, height, width. Okay, so maybe under vegetation, that's covered up here too. So cover type, density, and height. Would we have that level of specificity in our regs for the pre and post? And they would have to say, if they're changing this much area, the cover type is changing. Or in this much area, the density is changing from this to this. Or they're changing height's tricky. I guess we could say how many trees they're cutting down. Is that what we would want to put it? I'm just trying to get down to, like, for those two things. In our regs, we would have existing for soils, and for existing and post, we'd have three things for vegetation.
Well, I would also care about native species versus non-invasives and diversity.
Okay.
There's
Well,
that
that's
somewhere.
cover type, I guess. We'd have to specify what cover type means. Whether that's just herbaceous shrub tree, or it's also invasive. Okay, so we can do that, but we would do that kind of, but I'm just trying to get at whether we don't just have the word vegetation in our regs and then a policy with these things underneath it, or whether we put these three things in our regs.
It's a good question. I'm curious whether there are some examples of towns that have put that kind of specificity into regulation. That might be worth a little bit of effort to dig into and see if there are some examples, and then see how, see if we can find out how that has worked.
I guess we could put a post on the MACC line. Okay, but I guess I'd say maybe for the sake of us moving forward, we have to make a cut at what these categories are and what the things underneath it. And maybe at this point, if we could just come up with the categories and the subcategories and which are existing and which are post, that's our next task, and we can then later on decide where they get put. And maybe a task to move this thing forward is just to come up with this matrix of critical characteristics and which are existing and which are post, and or both. And because, and all the existing ones, obviously, as I wrote on the left-hand side, like soil texture, soils comes into something where it's existing. To just help us assess impacts. And a lot of these biological condition, I don't know what that is, or that's really vegetation. I guess we can, some combination of 3.1, 0.2, and 0.3. We can come up with a list of, I mean, I'm not sure we're going to get into the subsurface water regime. I think we could put a clause in about, for particularly large projects, we might have some other information requests. But even on large projects, we've never gone down to, I mean, groundwater path flows get done in an analysis of impact that's done for drinking water wells. That was done, but I don't think we've ever really done that for a wetlands case, although, because we've already learned that we get like even for septic systems, even if they're outside of our jurisdiction, we can't project what that effluent flow is going to do, was what we were told, unless policy or legals have changed since the last 5-10 years. When we appealed a superseding order from the state, and we appealed it to I guess it's a quasi judiciary hearing. I forgot what it's called. When you appeal that, he threw that out when you had a large effluent plume septic field just outside of the buffer zone. And we argued that that's a problem pre-made, and by the time it causes a problem, it's too late to do anything about it. But okay, so the question is, we have to go through this and figure out what's practical for us, and just leave a loop that obvious hole that we could do more. And that we would put that in a definition of critical characteristics of 5.2.2. Maybe kind of a section. And we can decide later how much detail goes in there. And then as to actual performance standards, I guess maybe we just need to get that task done and maybe see how that means. Because the performance standards, we just want to spend a little more, since I can't spend too much more time tonight, but this work an undeveloped buffer. I guess people, I don't want people reading it now. I don't know how many people have comments on this versus making people actually respond to this. Whether people want to read it now and comment, or do we have a path of, before our next meeting, people, each one of you edits this document and says what you like and don't like about these performance standards. Or just say to be discussed. I don't care if it's cursory, but you do that. And you all send it in to me and I'll compile it. And that way it'll force a discussion where people are more prepared. So I'll even know who's still around and paying attention. Courtney, Carol, Matt.
It's hard to pay attention at when it's been over an hour and it's after 10 o'clock.
Fine, that's all right. I have no problem accepting that. I just want to figure out whether that's the path to go forward, to do it that way.
Well, we can't all comment on a document and send it to you.
Yes, they can. You can all comment individually and send it to me.
I don't think so.
I think so.
Separate documents, right?
Separate documents. I'm not going to talk to you about it all. I will just get it compiled with maybe I might need some help, but I will compile it, or if I don't get around to it, I will show them up at the next screen, and at the next time we talk about this, and we'll walk through each person's and people can comment. But I'm trying to get away that people actually, I mean, I don't want to play silliness here, but I'm just trying to get away to people to actually read it carefully before a meeting. If that's a useful tool, or whether everybody just does it on their own and be prepared to comment on each of these things here at the next meeting, along with, I'll figure out how much I do, or we just get Matt to do this compilation that we just talked to. I guess I'd love to do it, but I know I have severe limitations on my time, so I will probably, if Matt can do something in the next 3 weeks on that matrix task, is that something that's doable by you, Matt?
I think so. Mhm.
And I would just say also, I would say, yeah, and I'll go back to even that second document that I sent, where I started doing some of that categorization. I'll say to go look at what I did for notes. It's a number 2 document that I think I've sent to you. It's in the, I guess I'll resend it to you.
Okay.
It would also help to do this earlier in the meeting, not 3 hours in.
Yeah, no, if we don't have
refresh.
Well, we only have one hearing, which we can do later. Right, and also at some point, we might just have to have a separate meeting where we just do it when we're fresh and just meet for an hour and a half on a separate time if we don't have it. But our next meeting, we just have one ONOI. I guess other things can come in between now and then, right? Joyce?
Other things can come in up until next Thursday.
So for now, whether we want to do this, why don't we do this one, our first hearing? Because we can always, if we get a lot of things in, we can just have 1 hour for this, starting at, let's say, 7:20 to 8:20. And then we would schedule that other NOI for 8:20 and see what else comes in. If we don't have anything after the other NOI, we could always continue that hearing a little bit later if that one doesn't take very long. So we can get more than an hour. Or do we want to start with I don't know, how complicated is that NOI looking?
It just came in today. I haven't looked at it. I
Okay.
believe it's for a septic system, so
Oh,
it won't be too complicated, I don't think.
okay. So what do people think of continuing this hearing to 7:20 next week, in 3 weeks?
I would move that.
And doing the other here and giving it whatever, we can do the other one if they make it easier for them, we could do it till 8:15, and we can always see what energy we have and what other things come up. That we give it sort of the 45 minutes to an hour. I'm just a little concerned, I guess. If we get a lot of stuff come in, we could always limit this discussion to a half an hour or 40 minutes and put in some other RDAs or something in the middle so we don't run too late. But okay. So people will look at these things here at the end here and think about the issues in this Matt document so that we can just have people's thoughts without reading it at the moment. And Matt and I can go back and work with him on just getting that matrix of characteristics that are critical, what's for post, what's pre. So that we also have that to go over. And also look at just look at how we did our past 5.2 and the sort of very simple level of that we have here in Matt's draft. Okay, is that enough for tonight?
Yes.
Okay, eyebrows speak wonders. And
Second,
okay. So
We continue the hearing?
we're continuing this hearing until 7:20 on May 4th. And the other hearing okay, actually, I'll stop there. We already specified that we'll put off the other one till 8:15. Okay, I move that we continue this hearing to 7:20 on May 4th. And Matt seconded that, I think. He knew exactly what I was going to say. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, I. Courtney,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Matt.
aye.
Okay, is there any other business we need to do?
No,
Okay, I move that we adjourn at 10:15.
Second.
16, I guess. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, I. Jacob,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. I'll send you some stuff. Matt B. And we could talk about it too, how it goes along the way. Because I think it'll be an interesting task. And we could see whether I've seen a little limited specificity. Oh, actually, let me I am now, the meeting is over. Where do I have my
good night.
good night, Joyce? Stop recording.